Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, this is Andrew, and in today's episode of Is It Worth It, we'll be talking about the French sniper, Aimee. Now please take note of the time of this video, as some numbers and stats may change, but I don't think the overall playstyle of Aimee would deviate that much by the time you guys are viewing this. So we'll go over her stats, weapons, abilities, playstyles, all to determine whether or not she is worth your 50,000 credits or $10 USD. So yeah, Aimee's a recon with a health pool of 90 and a sprint speed of 440, which makes her about the same speed as Kara, but a little bit slower than Proxy. However, I think practically you could say she's even slower than Kara just because of the weapons Aimee uses, which are sniper rifles. And sniper rifles make her run speed only at 85%, whereas assault rifles reduce speed to 87.5%. So not that big of a difference, but I figured it was worth mentioning. Now speaking of weapons, the sniper rifles she does have access to are the Felix, Grenadier, and the PDP 70, the PDP 70 of course being her default. Secondary, she gets the Calden, Selbstot, and the DE 50, DE 50 being her default secondary. And for melee, she gets to choose between the Beckhill, the Kukri, and the Stiletto, now the Stiletto being the default knife. Her ability is quite interesting. It's called the snitch device, and it has a multitude of uses. It's not just a simple sort of detection type thing as you would get from the heartbeat sensor. Not only will it spot targets, but it will debuff enemies so they take 25% more bullet damage, not explosive damage, bullet damage, and it will prevent the enemy from healing. Now this effect, this whole debuff will last for about 7 seconds, and it can be negated if the enemy gets healed again. It also does 1 point of damage for each time this effect tags someone. The idea is that enemies that get tagged will have a damage marker and they can more easily figure out where the snitch is. But at the same time, I've actually seen people get killed by the 1 damage of the snitch device. So it's a little interesting little tidbit there. The cooldown is 30 seconds, and this is okay because it does last for about 31 to 32 seconds by my estimates. The point is that the snitch will last longer than its cooldown, so you never really have any sort of downtime when using the snitch unless you get it killed. Alright, so enough of the snitch. I'll kind of go into more detail about this later, but for primaries, Aimee gets the PDP 70, which could be touted as the most overpowered weapon or the most underpowered weapon, depending on who you ask. I mean, for a while, Red Eye with the PDP in competitive was ridiculously powerful, but since the recent PDP nerfs to its recoil, I'm curious if that meta still stands. Nevertheless, I think the PDP is still really strong. It hits for 45 damage to the body, doubling up to 90 damage a headshot. It shoots at a rate of 180 RPM with a magazine size of 11 rounds and a reload speed of 2.8 seconds. Overall, I find this weapon to be a little bit more difficult to use since the recoil increase. However, it's still ridiculously powerful against mercs with 90 HP. With a snitch debuff that goes up to mercs with 110 health, but I feel like the more HP a merc has, the better off you are with the Felix in comparison, as it will hit for quite a lot more damage on the headshots with the bolt action. Landing consecutive PDP shots can be more difficult, and not having that one shot, one kill ability on mercs with more than 90 HP can mean that a lot more mercs will escape by ducking under cover, whereas if you had just landed that first headshot with the Felix, it would be like an insta-kill. One thing to note is that you can actually one-shot, body shot mercs with 90 HP with the snitch debuff with the Felix, as it does 98.75 damage to the body with the amplification. So it's sort of a toss-up between the two guns, because on one hand, if you can line up a bunch of headshots on a bunch of squishy mercs, the PDP is like really strong because it shoots really quickly. And on the other hand, you have the Felix, which really rewards high accuracy. It's pretty much a one-shot headshot kill on most mercs. But then you have the Grenadier, which is also quite nice. It kind of lacks a little bit less damage than PDP, but it has much more CQC viability, and I would say the recoil is also a lot more manageable just because of the lower zoom size, and they've actually been reducing the recoil on the Grenadier. So I guess what I'm getting at is pretty much any of the 3 primaries you get with Aimee, they're all really good. The PDP is great, the Grenadier is also quite good, and the Felix offers that one-shot headshot type playstyle. I guess it really depends on your own playstyle, your own preference, but definitely try all the different primaries before giving your final verdict on which one you want to use. I think Aimee is definitely very versatile in that sort of regard. If you guys are curious which primary I've been using the most, I would have to say it's the PDP, but that's just because I got the card in Cobalt, and I don't get to play the PDP that much, so I wanted to give it more love and attention, but I will have to say that the Grandier and the Felix both felt really, really good on Aimee. Felix especially, man, I was landing a lot more shots with that thing than I normally would. Now, moving on to the secondaries, I would say the selection is less impressive. Her default is D50, and as much as I like the pistol for its design and the novelty factor, in practice it's probably the weakest of all the pistols in my opinion. Doing 20 damage per shot, 40 damage per headshot, it shoots at a rate of 360 RPM, has a smaller magazine size of 7 rounds, and a reload speed of 1.4 seconds. That small magazine, though, is really what holds this pistol back, and I wouldn't say it's nearly as dependable as the Selbstad or the M9, but I will say the DE50 will do the job in a pinch as a finisher weapon. The Colden pistol is marginally better since it now has 8 rounds in the magazine. However, I think the king of the pistols, at least with Aimee, is the Selbstad. Melee-wise, Aimee gets the stiletto knife as default, which is mediocre. I'm not a huge fan of the knife. It hits for 85 damage at the lunge, 35 damage for the quick slash, and in my opinion, the melee turn speed slowdown effect that the stiletto has, it's really what hurts this weapon. It's pretty difficult to use in an actual fight. It's more of like a tool to give down enemies. My personal preference of the melee weapons that Aimee has access to is the Beckel combat knife, as it has that very clean, quick animation that makes meleeing enemies to death pretty easy. Now, moving on to the loadouts, I want to say that Splash Damage has done a very, very good job in balancing out her cards. Overall, I'd say they're pretty evenly spread out. You can't really go wrong with any of them, and a lot of it comes down to personal preference, but I'm sure you guys are curious about what my preference is, so I'll just kind of go through it with you guys. So, first thing that comes to mind is, okay, I like to have a good pistol on me, especially since Aimee is more of a long-range type chick and she only gets sniper rifles, so you want to have a decent sidearm for those CQC encounters. So to me, that's a no-brainer. You have to have the Selbstad 40, which is pretty much mandatory. I mean, it's the only one with more than 8 rounds. Augment-wise, I find that the most useful are Spotter because it increases your snitch detection range. Another augment I like is Quick Eye because, you know, with Aimee's 440 movement speed, that translates to a much more noticeable difference in strafe speed, which will help you avoid getting sniped while you're aiming down your sights. So with that said, my loadouts of choice, well, for the PDP, it's going to be the P81 Enhanced Sniper, the F82 Augmented Sniper for the Felix, and the Grandier loadout would be the G85 Hurricane Sniper. That is not to say the other 6 loadouts of Aimee's are bad or anything. It's just that, for me personally, I don't find that much use in Drill or Guardian Angel. You know, those are kind of augments that I don't find too necessary on Aimee since she's kind of far back anyways. But if you guys really value that kind of stuff, you know, by all means, use a loadout with those perks. Anyways, so at the end of the day, is Aimee worth it? Well, to me, Aimee's a sniper, and my playstyle, I'm gonna have to admit it, is not sniping. I'm much more of an aggressive player. Sniping kind of forces you to stay back, especially with Aimee's 90 HP. That being said, though, I do enjoy playing her. I'm not saying she's not fun. I'm not saying she's not viable. She's definitely fun. She's definitely strong. However, she's very, very niche. And the snitch device is pretty interesting. It has, you know, all these different uses, which really differentiates itself from the heartbeat sensor, the one that Vasily has. The difference is that it offers less range for detection and has a longer cooldown, and it can't spot through walls, so it requires line of sight to work, but it can stick onto walls, can be reclaimed, and has little to no downtime between its active time and its cooldown. Now, does this mean it's better than Vasily's heartbeat sensor? Well, no. I mean, Aimee requires a lot more map knowledge, in my opinion, and requires really good placement of the snitch to maximize its potential to really overcome those shortcomings, but it does offer more benefit to the team, in my opinion, in the form of recon spotting as well as those damage debuffs. The heartbeat sensor that Vasily gets has over double the detection radius, right? It's pretty easy to use. You can't really mess it up. You can just kind of toss it out there. You will net someone in your detection range. It can see through walls, and it has a much shorter cooldown. So the advantage that Vasily has over Aimee is, you know, all these things with the heartbeat sensor, but you kind of lose out on the damage stuff and the sticking on wall stuff that the snitch has. The other advantage that Vasily has over Aimee is that the 20 extra HP allows him to tank a single sticky bomb as well as a single chopper katana lunge. So that difference, it's only 20 HP, but it's a pretty big difference. You know, having 90 HP on a Merc gives her so many more weaknesses. It requires much better positioning. I would also say that Vasily has an advantage in the secondary department, you know, getting access to the machine pistols, which in my opinion better covers him for CQC than Aimee. I mean, Aimee only gets at best the self stat, which, you know, is good. It's good, but it's nowhere near the ease of use of a machine pistol, especially in CQC. So if you're debating between which sniper to get, Aimee or Vasily, I would say make sure your roster is already well-rounded before you really even buy a sniper, because when I was playing as Aimee, I felt pretty restricted the whole time playing as a sniper. I can't heal, I can't throw out ammo, I can't really do objectives that well. If you already have a well-rounded team, I would say Vasily's probably the more new friendly, just because of his better secondaries, his spammier heartbeat sensor, and that he can see through walls. He's slightly more tanky. And he's also cheaper. He's only 30,000 credits. So what I'm saying isn't that Aimee sucks, it's just that Aimee requires a bit more map knowledge. I would say she is a little bit harder to use just because of how squishy she is. And, you know, if you can master her downsides, she can bring a lot to your team, both as a supportive sniper and disrupting the enemy team with the snitch debuffs. If you place a good snitch, you know, you can really lock down a whole area with your PDP or whatever sniper rifle you use. Overall, I think Aimee's really fun. She's refreshing. She adds new depth to Dirty Bomb, but I wouldn't say 100% that she's needed in a roster. If you're looking for your first Merc purchase, go with an engineer first. You know, save the sniper for the second or third Merc purchase. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed my review of Aimee. I hope it was at least somewhat informative on how Aimee plays out and if she is worth it for you. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think of Aimee. You know, is she worth it? Is she not worth it for you? And until next time, guys, I'll see you in the next one.